It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, football is back. Yes, indeed, we will be taking a look inside some of the preseason debuts from the top names in the NFL draft, even though it is preseason and nobody really cares. We'll also be taking a look inside developing Antonio Brown's situation from Raiders camp. We'll have an update on the holdouts and so much more. We hope you enjoy and stay tuned.
Indeed, I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Wow. What a week it's been. We do apologize for taking a week off. I know you must have missed us, but we're back. Dan Dembski with me once again. Dan, how we doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's a good pleasure to be back again in the presence of a podcasting legend, Mr. Josh Kirby.
Oh, I'm far from that, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
As always, the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast is part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network. And make sure you try a bag of the delicious Route 11 chips, who sponsor our podcast. So make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. So, man, interesting week. So far, we have a lot to recap. Some week one action of preseason. I want to briefly touch on that. Did you watch any, Dan?
Watched the Ravens game.
The Ravens?
But that was... And I saw part of the Redskins game as well.
Well, I saw the Redskins.
I'm sure you did.
How'd you like that performance from Dwayne Haskins?
You know, the interceptions are a concern. I think, especially just the way he threw them, they were pretty bad interceptions. You know, there's times where it's tipped and it's batted up in the air and stuff like that. But look, it was his first game in the NFL. Not an official game necessarily, but an exhibition game nonetheless. You get a chance to see what he could look like in live in real time. So I think he'll be fine. I think the concerns for me with the Redskins, and have been for years, is the offensive line, and I think we're going to touch on that a little later. But he got hit a lot, and there was one play in particular where he banged his head on the ground. It was early on in the game. I don't know if you saw that, but he hit his head hard on the turf, and I was like, man, that is not the way you want your rookie quarterback to be introduced into the NFL, in preseason nonetheless.
Yeah, Dwayne Haskins, one of the quarterbacks who played most of the game because he was not that high in the depth chart, as Case Keenum got the second string role because Colt McCoy did not play. Dwayne Haskins, 8 for 14 in the game, 117 yards with 2 interceptions. You know, it's more of a learning experience for me, for him, but I think he's going to learn. How is he going to handle this game? How is he going to come out next week and perform better? How is he going to handle the pressure? That's my question, you know.
Well, and that's a really solid question that you're asking a rookie quarterback. You like you said, you want to see progression. You don't want to see you don't expect him to come out and throw 5 touchdowns and no interceptions and have a perfect quarterback rating. But you do want to see some improvement and some progression in that area. They were talking about Lamar Jackson, for example, a guy who was a rookie last year, rookie quarterback. And that's what they said about him. We want to see progression because he didn't play too hot last week either. So it's the same whether you're a rookie quarterback or whether you're a veteran quarterback. You want to see week to week things be tightened up. And by week 3, the preseason is when we'll see most of the starters. And like you said, Dwayne Haskins isn't a starter, but I think by the midway point in the regular season he could be. We'll see what happens, but I think he'll play better this game because he's got some experience under his belt. He's seen that the NFL, you know, the players are faster, the players are stronger. It's just it's a way different game than it was for him at Ohio State, and he played in a pretty good conference too. I mean, the Big Ten is no joke. But we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Redskins' loss to the Browns, another big story. The guy, I do not recall his name, who ran that punt return back on the Redskins, of course. He was living in his car, and he talked his way into a tryout, and now he's on the team and had a punt return. So that's pretty crazy, but of course it happened against the Redskins, Moving to someone that I did not expect to have this great of a series. Daniel Jones. A perfect drive and a touchdown against the Jets.
Well, it's preseason.
No, I know, but still a perfect drive to start off the preseason. Is there any concern, do you think, for Eli's starting role?
Not right now. I think he's pretty much... I mean, the guy's won 2 Super Bowls, regardless of how he's played the last 4 or 5 years, which he hasn't been good. He's been near the bottom of the NFL. He's still got those Super Bowl rings he can flash and say, look what I've done for the franchise. You can't just kick me to the curb like that. But, I think it's a similar situation, and I think it's a little different in New York than it is in Washington, in that if he starts playing poorly, the fans have been seeing that for years now. They've been seeing it for 4 or 5 years, and they're going to be calling for Daniel Jones. I don't think the perfect drive in the grand scheme of things matters in the preseason. And, again, your record also doesn't matter in the preseason, because the Lions were 4-0 in the preseason and in 2008, and then they went 0-16 in the regular season. So there's a fun fact. Also, but yeah, I think Eli's going to have the starting job come week 1. There's really no question in my mind. I still think they drafted Daniel Jones way too high, Josh. They could have gotten him in the late second or early third round, maybe even middle third round.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like he was drafted way too high.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was the right pick for them. But
no, they should have taken Dwayne Haskins, or they really could have taken any quarterback. I don't know if they were. Well, Kyler Murray was obviously gone at that point. Was he the second quarterback taken?
The first.
He was the first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it is what it is there, but the next thing I have, will Eli last the whole season? That's my question.
Yeah,
because
that's a good
he's
question.
getting pretty old.
Yeah.
And if mistakes are made, I think the Giants are going to go with Daniel Jones.
I would agree with that. I don't know how much better it would be. I don't... Daniel Jones, his college stats really weren't all that impressive for me, and I got to see him play quite a bit because he played in the ACC. So, but I could see it, Josh. If Eli has a string of games, 2 or 3 games where he just plays poorly and it's not working, I think the Giants pull him and throw Daniel Jones out there, and that's often how it happens with rookie quarterbacks. Either the starting quarterback gets hurt, or in the case of most famously Tom Brady, which, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. Tom Brady comes in, and the rest is history. But this is a different story, obviously. You got an aging quarterback, like you said. How much longer can he play, even? I thought maybe he should have retired 2 or 3 years ago, to be quite honest with you. But I don't think he lasts the whole season, Josh. I don't know what your thought is on that, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting regardless.
I think it comes down to injury. And if he can do well, if there are a lot of mistakes made, I think the coach is going to pull him, But Eli, I think he's on the last leg of his career. He did well winning 2 Super Bowls. Don't get me wrong, he's a great athlete, but I think he's on the last leg of his career. So it's going to be interesting to see with the Giants and what they do. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and those New York fans, they are very passionate and they're very vocal. And I think they'll be calling for Daniel Jones like week 2 or 3. Now, whether it makes them any better and and gives them a chance to, have a winning record, I'm not sure. Because I think Daniel Jones, for me, he didn't prove himself enough in college. He just didn't, and that's just the way I feel about it. I think he's in over his head, and we're gonna find out come this season. I think probably by week 8, I think we'll see Daniel Jones get some significant time. We'll see.
Yeah. Some other names who played in Week 1. Kyler Murray, the first overall pick in the NFL draft, 6 for 7, 44 yards in his only series, and
that's pretty good for one series. Yeah.
Drew Lock, 17 for 28, 180 yards with a touchdown and an interception. A lot of people saying not a great debut for Drew Lock.
No.
But yet again, it is preseason.
Right, and that was a low-scoring game anyways, really a defensive battle for much of it. And, I think Joe Flacco is going to be the starter. Everybody knows out in Denver that's going to be the case.
Oh,
so.
you're just a Ravens boy. You want him to start.
No, I don't. I really don't care at this point. But he's one of those guys that's proven himself, not the past few years, similar situation with Eli, but yeah, I think Drew Lock's gonna. I'd give him 2 or 3 years to back up Joe Flacco. I don't know how much longer Flacco's gonna play, to be honest with you, and learn the system under him, and so we'll see what happens. Apparently, Flacco didn't have the best relationship with Lamar Jackson, which is interesting because, I think they're gonna be asking him questions about his relationship with Drew Lock. We'll see, but yeah, I think Lock's gonna have some time to mature as a quarterback, and it's going to take a couple years. It could be like an Aaron Rodgers sort of situation, but I'm not saying Joe Flacco is like Brett Favre, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Yep. So preseason week 2 kicks off tonight as we're recording this episode. So moving right along here to a very interesting, bizarre situation, if I had to say the least. What's going on with Antonio Brown? That's the real question. I see a report on my phone saying Antonio Brown threatens to not play football if he doesn't get to wear his old helmet. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, over a helmet? I didn't really get it, but now he ended up finding a newer model of his helmet, and he's coming back to play for the Raiders. And I'm sure that some of that will be on Hard Knocks. I have yet to watch Hard Knocks. I need to watch Hard Knocks.
I feel like a lot of this is for Hard Knocks.
I agree too. I agree too.
Don't you feel that way? Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It all seems too good to be true. It's all doctored up, and he appealed his decision or whatnot to I don't know who the title is of the person who handles these sorts of things, but. They denied it, and of course, I think like many people thought, he said he was going to quit, right? If he got denied to wear his old helmet, and then he said he's coming back. So he's got a new model or something. Here's the thing about it, and I heard this today. Supposedly the newer helmet, the difference is the padding inside. So he could technically wear the old helmet, but as long as he has the new padding. Supposedly, that's what I heard. Earlier on today, but I'm not sure how true that is. But this whole thing is just I've never in my life heard a story like this in sports. I can't recall one this bizarre, to say the least. And now he's facing a lawsuit, and this came out yesterday, over a $38,000 chef's bill. He was not paid.
I heard that too.
Yeah, and I'm just now seeing this. I didn't hear about that. I guess everything with the helmet, this story's kind of been pushed to the back burner, but this is all so strange.
Who racks up $38,000 at a restaurant?
When you have the money, man, you can spend it. That's the way I see it, but
it was probably for multiple people, because I cannot imagine
sure.
Antonio Brown eating $38,000 worth of food and drinks.
He probably had a bunch of friends with him, I'd imagine, and he just kept buying food and drinks and stuff like that. And that stuff's not cheap, even if you're just paying for yourself. You know what I mean? But that's crazy. But he's a distraction, and I think the Steelers are kind of saying the Raiders like we told you so sort of thing. And you remember when this deal happened, and everyone said, "Wow, the Steelers gave up one of their key receivers for really nothing." But now the Steelers are kind of laughing, saying, "Look at the pain he's caused you," and it's not. We're not even out of the preseason yet, so Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds in the regular season, and how much of a diva he is on the sidelines and stuff like that. So,
It's just drama. I can't believe it shouldn't be in the NFL. I just don't like it. But some of this, I guarantee you, it's for Hard Knocks.
oh, for sure.
I really want to watch Hard Knocks now.
I do too, but I don't have HBO, so I have to figure out something else. But
Yep. So, moving on, some holdouts updates. Trent Williams, the Redskins are not moving him, and he's not playing. I'm not. I just don't know anymore.
probably your best player.
Yeah, our best player
Quite
sitting on the
honestly.
bench. And a report came out, Sua Cravens of the Broncos is still fighting with the Redskins over his injury settlement. So, I mean, I can't blame Trent if he's sitting out due to injury, because you got to get a handle on that. The Redskins were like second last year in the most injuries on the team.
They might have had the most on IR, or they were top 3.
Yeah.
But they've been in the top 5 the last, I don't know how long, 5 or 6 years at least, Josh.
So
That's a mess. That's a mess.
yeah, it's a big mess, and I'm not really sure how it's gonna turn out for the O-line. But Donald Penn, he gets the starting role. Let's
Yeah,
see
we'll
what
see.
he can do with it.
Yeah, I think they should just trade him, honestly.
But they won't. They will not trade him.
I know. I think
They
it's
could get something good for
I think
Trent
it's a
Williams.
mistake. I think it's a mistake. He's 31 years old.
He's still in his prime.
Yeah, he can still play. I mean, all offensive linemen can play for years. He could probably play 5 or 6 more years at least. You can play well into your late 30s in that position as long as you don't have a lot of injuries, which, like he said, he's had. So, but I agree. I think they should trade him, especially since he doesn't want to play there. I mean, what's the point of keeping a guy on your team who doesn't want to play? You know what I mean?
I don't get it.
Doesn't make sense, man.
And another team in the NFC East, Zeke Elliott, he wants a new contract. He wants to get paid. Am I correct? He wants to get paid, right?
Oh, he wants big money. Yeah.
and
he
then
wants,
Dak Prescott comes out and says he wants a $40 million contract.
well, he turned down a $30 million contract.
Yeah, he turned down $30 million for $10 extra million.
So this year he's making $2 million, which makes him one of the lowest paid quarterbacks.
How is Dallas going to pay both Zeke and Dak?
They're America's team. Jerry's got the money, man. He can cough it up,
But apparently it's not getting coughed up yet.
no,
So,
Jerry Jones and Zeke are having quite the debate, and he compared. I don't know if you heard this. Jerry Jones was talking about contract negotiations. I don't know if he wasn't referring to Zeke. I don't know if he's referred to Zeke or not, but he mentioned he compared it to like a car crash where you almost lose your hand but you don't. I will try to find the quote for you, but yeah, I saw it on Around the Horn yesterday, and I was like, the heck? And or maybe it was PTI. It was PTI, but anyway, yeah, I don't know how that's going to be sorted out, but Jerry Jones has a way of sort of enticing those players to sign the contract. But you know, the thing with running backs is it's not like it used to be. I mean, you can get you can get a good running back for a cheap rate now, and they're always running backs are interchangeable. I think in most teams. Zeke's probably a little different, and I'd probably put Melvin Gordon up there too, but they're really the only ones. But I'm not sure if he's going to get his money, Josh. It just all depends on how the master of negotiating, Jerry Jones, does. But it's crazy. I don't know if they can afford to pay both of them. But I think if there's a franchise in the NFL that can't afford,
it's Jerry Jones.
it's Jerry
and
Jones
the
and the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah.
Jinx, show me a soda.
Yeah. No, I don't.
But do you see one of these players getting traded or signing with another team?
Yeah, I could see them leaving. I don't know how many years does Zeke have left? 1 year? I guess both guys have 1 year left on their contract. Well, obviously Dak does because he's playing this year and making $2 million. Turned down like one of the highest paid quarterback contracts in the NFL. I think it would have been like number 2 or 3, which I don't. He's not that good. The problem is with the top the top echelon of quarterback contracts is look at the top 5, and a lot of those quarterbacks that like have never won a playoff game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like Tom Brady, who's like way down the list now. I think he's going to get paid, and he deserves to get paid. He should have gotten paid a long time ago. But you know, Dak's like, I think he's an above-average quarterback. I mean, to be quite honest. And he's always had a really good offensive line and pretty good receivers to throw the ball to, so he's been helped in that area. But I don't know. It's a big question mark whether or not they'll be able to pay both those guys.
Yep. So we'll keep you updated on those holdouts as they develop throughout the NFL season. But for right now, we're gonna take a quick break. When we return, Dan and I will be covering the NFC East and a preview for them. Stay tuned. Yes, indeed, another segment of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, and this one's a little bit different. If you haven't been on the podcast train for a while now, as you know, national sports I love talking about, but I also love talking about high school sports. And that's one thing that makes my podcast different than all the others, in my opinion, because I like incorporating the local high schools into my podcast for the listeners that know me personally. They know I'm local, and I just love to incorporate that in there. So, on this segment, we have Dan Gloucester once again, my good friend and a play-by-play voice on the radio for FoxSports1550.com and iHeartRadio. Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. As always, it's good to hear from you again. And how's your off season been?
Oh, it's been pretty good, Josh. How many segments/episodes are you up to now with your podcast?
I'm almost at 50 now. I had to take
wow,
a week
man.
Yeah, I had to take a week off last week, but I'm still rolling. I'm still
well, man,
rolling.
I commend you. I commend you for that. Obviously, it's a passion of yours, so good on you for doing that. We took a little bit longer of a break, Ken and I, but we're back at it here a little bit. So, but yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and let's talk some high school football.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard Dan's podcast, he runs the Shenandoah Valley Sports Podcast. You can find that on iHeartRadio. Just search up the Shenandoah Valley Sports Podcast. And each and every week through high school football season, he will be recapping the week of high school football. And it sure is exciting. And make sure every Friday nights or Saturdays when Hanley is playing, you catch them on FoxSports1550.com and iHeartRadio. So, first and foremost, the main thing that happened that I really want to get into is the new playoff format expanding from 6 teams to 8 teams. And Dan, I know you read up a little bit more on this, so would you care to explain how this impacts the Northwestern District and the local
Sure.
high schools in our area?
Yeah, it's the 4C region playoff bracket, and it used to be 6 teams, Josh, and the top 2, Shenandoah being one of those last year, for example, got a bye, but all the other classes, A, B, and D, had gone with an 8-team playoff format. So the C region decided to do the same thing. So no more byes. And here's how it'll work. You'll get 4 teams out of the Northwestern District, and 4 teams out of the Dulles District, and then they will match up the teams like this. It'll be the number 1 seed from the Northwestern District playing the number 4 seed from the Dulles District, the number 2 seed from the Northwestern District playing the number 3 seed from the Dulles District. That'd be kind of one side of the bracket, and the other side would be the number 1 Dulles District would play the number 4 seed in the Northwestern, and the number 2 Dulles District team seed would play the number 3 Northwestern District team. And then the winners of those would play the team in their bracket, and then the eventual top 2 teams left would play for the regional championship, and then they would go on to the football state Final Four. So basically, no more buys for the top 2 teams. It'll be 8 teams, and it'll open things up a little bit. You hope it doesn't, as some people think, water it down, meaning you'll have too many teams with losing records in it. But so be it. That's what the VHSL decided that they wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, competition is a big thing, but in your opinion, do you believe it will get too watered down this way, or do you like the way they changed it?
I guess I probably like the way they're going to do it now. Give a couple more teams a chance to play, in the playoffs. Again, you may have that case where you get a 5-5 or a 4-16, but in the playoffs, it's once that regular season's over, you got to play it on the field. You could have upsets, but the odds are at this level usually the better team wins. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, just like the upset last year in basketball, James Wood over Millbrook in the first round of
Sure.
the Northwestern District. So something like that
Yeah.
could possibly happen.
Sure. And we actually talked Josh to actually the Hanley AD, and he said that they were talking that might be the biggest upset in the history of Virginia high school sports, that James Wood playoff victory over Millbrook last spring in boys basketball. So
Yeah, like their record was like 1-21 or something like that, right?
well, actually, their record going into the game, they had not won a game.
Oh
I
my!
think they were 0-22, maybe 21 entering the game. So they had not won a game. And Millbrook had beaten them by an average of 39 points in the regular season matchups. So that's how big of an upset it was. I mean, James Wood lost the next game to Liberty, but still, what
Kettle
a thing
Run.
for them to be able to say. Was it Kettle Run?
Yeah, it was Kettle Run.
So, what a thing for those kids from James Wood to remember, and what a kind of a learning lesson for Millbrook to learn as well, because they might not have been looking too seriously at James Wood entering that game, considering how easily they had defeated them in the previous 2 games. So
Yeah, and then you have head coach Rob Harris resigning from the team after that.
yeah, I did hear about that.
Not sure if it was because of that game, but I don't want to stir too much speculation. But he did resign.
He did, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah.
Yeah, so getting back on topic here, great look into the playoff format. So now the juice of the podcast, this segment, shall I say, let's talk about all these teams. Let's talk about what they did last year and how we think they'll do this year. Just high school football preview, and start off with Clark County last year losing to Buffalo Gap in the first round of the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. So Dan, tell us a little bit about what Clark County has this season.
Well, they got Peyton Rutherford coming back. He is a senior. He had over 2,000 yards in his sophomore year, about 1,650 last year rushing as a junior. He's been to all kinds of camps during the summer. He ran track, decided not to play baseball, ran track, improved his speed. His dad is a Hamley alum, and his name is Billy, and he played back in the early '90s. But Peyton is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. And then you got Colby Childs, the quarterback in that single wing offense, and he is the son of Casey Childs, who's the defensive coordinator for Clark County, but also the Clark County High School Activities Director. So those are two pretty key players for Clark County, and they're hoping that their defense, which last year was really young, hoping that experience is going to help them. In that loss to Buffalo Gap, they gave up almost 400 yards to one running back, and I can't remember his name, but he luckily was a senior for Buffalo Gap last year. So, but that's going to be a rematch, if you will, first time they'll ever have played in the regular season, and that'll be on August the 30th. And we're actually going to broadcast that game. Fox Sports 1550.iheart.com is where you can hear that game Friday, August the 30th. So that's Clark County. They finished up 7-4 last year. One thing about the Bull Run District, they're getting East Rockingham in this year, and they're getting Luray in this year. And those two teams went pretty deep into the playoffs. Where East Rock was a 2A or a Class 2 state semifinalist. So the Bull Run District is going to be a little bit tougher this year for everybody. So that's Clark County.
And East Rockingham down towards Harrisonburg, if I am correct, in Luray, in Luray, Virginia, like near central Virginia, not that far away, but yeah, definitely going to make that tougher by the way you worded that. But random question: where is Buffalo Gap?
I want to say it's south of Staunton. That's really just a stab, Josh. Honestly, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because I honestly.
But they do run the same exact offense pretty much as Clark County. So.
That's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the first time I've heard the name Buffalo Gap was last year when you broadcasted that game, and I was like, I wonder where they're from. So I didn't know if you knew. So moving on, the James Wood Colonels. Last year, James Wood was a really young team. Had a few wins, but this year I think the leadership is growing, and one wide receiver, if I'm correct, by the name of William Crowder is coming back, and I believe he's going to have an impact on the James Wood Colonels football team this year. Your thoughts on the James Wood high school football team, Dan?
Yeah, the William Crowder is a really good track athlete. Runs the 100. I think he was finished real high in the district meet and even in the state meet. So he's definitely going to be somebody teams are going to have to contend with. Another player to watch, Josh, is Jackson, and he's got a nickname, the Hammer Turner. He is a linebacker for James Wood, and Ryan Morgan, the head coach of the Colonels, spoke very highly of him. He's a returning captain and two-time defensive MVP coming back for his senior year. So Jackson Turner, somebody to look for Clark County. They've got Carson Hoberg back at quarterback, and this is his senior year, and he's had decent playing time since his sophomore season. So just like most other teams with James Wood, it's the line play is going to be key, and can they protect their quarterback? Can they give their running backs some room to run? And that'll be something that they'll just have to figure out. They've lost some really good players and good young men. Luke Roy has gone on to Frostburg State, along with Will Hall, son of Bill Hall, head coach of the Sharanda Warriors. So both Hall and Luke Roy playing up there at Frostburg State. That's just one of the linemen that the Colonels lost. So it's going to be interesting to see how their lines kind of gel. And they got Sharanda right out of the gate on August 30th. So
just like
we all
last
know
year,
that's not easy. So that that's going to be tough for the Colonels to open up against Sharanda.
Yeah, so you're talking about all these athletes, these key athletes, and how they have played different sports like track and baseball and stuff. In your opinion, does it help for an athlete to be multi-sport to compete in multiple sports so they can be better at different aspects like track, running, translating onto the football field, and so on and so forth?
Of course, definitely. I mean, different muscles of the body are working with those different sports, and you're not really doing the same thing over and over again. So you're getting a little variety in your workouts. So yeah, I would definitely encourage and would encourage kids to play multiple sports. You know, it's not everybody. I mean, it's very few that are going to be able to go to the highest level. So you might as well enjoy it and play as many sports as you can while you can.
Yeah, and I heard your interview with Clark County's AD about how they have some multi-sport athletes, and I found it really interesting how it works, where they have to declare a primary sport, and then they have a secondary sport, and how they work all that practice time. And that was a really good episode, by the way. But like the amount of work you got to put in to be a multi-sport athlete, and all these key players, it seems like multi-sport athletes is what you want to be to improve on different muscles, like you said.
Yeah, and I had no idea that they had to do that. And what we're talking about, just to clarify, is that the players are playing two sports in the same season. Is what I think it was a young lady who was playing soccer and I believe running track. So yeah, they have to declare. So that means one takes precedent over the other, and the coaches for both of those teams know. But when you're at a small school like that, you got to be able to. You don't have too many athletes to choose from. So I think it's great that they give them the opportunity to do that. And even though it's probably a hard choice, but I think it also gives them that responsibility that they do have to declare, and that makes it up front. You know where you got to be. If you've got two options, you got to be at the one where you declared. You can't sway from that. So.
Yep. So, moving on from the James Wood Colonels to the Hanley Judges. Hanley, in my opinion, was a team last year who grew a lot under the leadership of Dan Jones after their former head coach, which I cannot recall his name, left.
John Davis.
John Davis, and he
Yep.
went to coach at the apprentice school. And funny story with that, the apprentice school, their first winning season in like 100 some years after John Davis came in. So he's definitely doing great things down there. But Dan Jones just seeming to take over where John Davis left off, and the little by little the Hanley Judges are becoming a rebuilding football team, and they had a few wins. I believe they were like 4-7 or 5-5, if I'm correct. I don't remember.
They were 4-6. They had a chance to finish 500. Lost to Wood on
in that muddy rain game you called all alone.
And just I don't think anybody's going to argue this, but James Wood, they didn't want to move that game. They wanted that game to be played that night in those conditions because they felt like that leveled the playing field. And both teams had to play on it. But James Wood said, let's just play, and they did. And that wasn't their last game. That was Hanley's last game. That wasn't their last game. They went to Liberty the next week and ended up losing. It was either Liberty or Kettle Run, but they did finish 4-6. Hanley. They did lose Kevin Curry. He's now at James Madison University, Josh, playing football. And they lost their quarterback, Jacob Parker, now a student at Virginia Tech. And they lost DeAndre James too. He's going to be a freshman at a school called Allen University down in Columbia, South Carolina. He's going to play basketball. But I digress a little bit. They do what kids they got coming back to look for. Malachi Emo is running back, part of their 4x100 team that finished second to Blacksburg in the 4x100 relay in the state track meet by 0.2 of a second. That was the difference between Hanley winning the state title and finishing second. So he was one leg.
Are you kidding me?
No. That's what they lost by.
Wow.
And then another player who's going to play football, Jaden Vardaro, was on that 4x100 team. And then the third is sophomore Stephen Daly, who had 15 sacks last year as a freshman. He's about 6'3" and about 220, and he's quite the specimen. And he's already been to some camps over the summer, including Virginia Tech and Marshall and Notre Dame. So already getting a lot of looks, because if you're that young and you're that big and that fast, because again, he was one of those legs of the 4x100 team as well, Stephen Daly, then you're going to get some people looking at you. So they've got speed. It's going to be a matter of if they can get any kind of good line play and have some size up front, and that's been their challenge. They just, when they run up against a team like Sharando that's really physical, they don't fare very well. So that's kind of gonna be the MO, I think, of Hanley, is how do they get the ball to their players in space and keep their quarterback from getting hit a lot, because that's kind of what happened in a lot of games that they had last year.
Yeah, I honestly think Hanley has a good shot of winning a couple more games than they did last year, because Dan Jones, he's such a great leader, in my opinion, after taking over for John Davis. And fun fact, Dan Jones, the tennis coach for Hanley, won the state championship.
Yep. Sure did. Yep. And he's been an assistant football coach for darn near 30 years too. So he's no spring chicken to handle football.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah, last year was his first year as the head coach. I think they open against. They're at Warren County August 30th. That's their opening game. They'll have again with Kevin Curry. That's a big loss. He was just, I think he had over 1,000 receiving yards and about 30 catches. So with 13 touchdowns and over 30 catches. So that's Hanley will have to overcome that, but they've got some good athletes.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll see what Hanley has in the tank. When's your first game calling against Hanley?
Let's see, Hanley. I believe we've got them September 28th against Falk here. That's a home game for Hanley. We were going to go to Harrisonburg, and there was too many chefs in the kitchen. Couldn't get everybody in the press box, so we had to
really
go to another game. Yep. They've got a lot going on that night. That's week 2, so we had to choose a different game that night. So.
All right, moving right along from Hanley to the Millbrook Pioneers. They something different about Millbrook this year. They will not be playing Sharando at the last game of the season, which is interesting.
Right.
A huge schedule mix-up this year, in my opinion. But Millbrook losing Savon Smith, if I'm correct. How are they going to recoup this running game?
Well, just to clarify the point you made, they moved that game up to the 27th because it just seemed like every year into the year the weather was coming into it. So that's, I think, why they moved that game earlier in the year, and it's September 27th, and that game will be at Millbrook. I think it's Sharando's at Millbrook that night. Savon Smith at the University of Richmond, Josh. Odds probably the most exciting player I've ever seen in this area. Basically, with the moves that he could make, he was that good. Gavin Eversearch, who was a slot receiver, is going to move into the backfield. He'll be their feature back. They've got Caden Booza back at quarterback. He'll have a little bit more experience than he had last year. And they've got 3 or 4 other guys that their names escape me, but will run the football. But Gavin Eversearch, who actually also played some quarterback as well. If you remember, 2 years ago when Sharando was at Millbrook and Isaac Brown, the quarterback, got hurt, and he also went to Richmond to play football. Gavin Eversearch was the player that came on to play quarterback, and the Pioneers came up just a little bit short in that game. But he's real tough, and Josh Amore thinks he'll be definitely hold his own at running back. And here's a couple other things about Millbrook. Josh Amore is going to be, he's the head coach, but he's also going to be the defensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator last year. He's going to move over to be the defensive coordinator. One of his coaches' wife had a child, so he's stepping down. And then they've got, I believe it's Brian Euler, who's going to be the offensive coordinator. So it's going to be a little bit, maybe not a totally different look, but going to have some different coaches in the management positions, if you will, for the Millbrook Pioneers as they open. Let's see, they are on the road at Jefferson County on August 30th. That's their opening game.
Yeah, definitely something to look out for. A head coach doing the role of a defensive coordinator. That's definitely big shoes to fill. Twice the preparation, if I were to guess. So definitely something different to look out for for Millbrook. And another thing I want to touch on for Millbrook is one of the 2 teams in the Northwestern, Millbrook and Sharando, with pretty long off-season conditioning programs to get them in shape for the next season. So what are your thoughts on that and how that that goes into preparing a football team for next season?
Well, what I always say is that you play in the fall, but you win in the off season, meaning you got to be conditioned. You gotta be lifting the weights in the off season to prepare your body for all that you're going to have to take contact wise and just getting your body ready. So you can't argue with success. Sharando's been doing it for years. Bill Hall just told me yesterday they started in January, and so not every week, but they would do things on a fairly consistent basis all throughout the winter, into the spring, even into the summer, to be ready for fall practice. So and both Millbrook and Sharando had some really good off-season conditioning programs. Can't really exactly expound on exactly what they did, but I know that Millbrook has they had some different awards that they would give out to players that did well in certain areas of their conditioning. So there's always got to be a component to, a reward component to all that training, and that's what they do. And just a side note, former Millbrook player Jordan Hartman is actually the strength coach at James Wood, and so they've actually stepped up to the plate, and they're doing a fair amount of off-season conditioning as well, as I'm sure Hanley is also. In Clark County, they're known for their weight training in the afternoon or in the off season as well. So it's definitely important. I think every coach that I've talked to, though, they say they encourage their kids to play other sports, but they also encourage them to take weight training in school, so you can kind of double your pleasure, if you will. You play another sport, but also you get to do a little weight training during school time.
Yeah, I
So it all
absolutely
works
agree.
together. All
I
goes together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you said there. And it's a great segue into the Shranda Warriors, my alma mater class of
Hmm.
2017. Had the great pleasure of meeting you, Dan, through a Shranda Warriors game away at Eastern View. So, looking
Hmm.
at Shranda, they lost their quarterback, Hunter Ensminger, playing baseball at JMU.
Hmm.
Stepping up to the plate now is Shakai Campbell and some other big name guys who are going to step up, in my opinion. Jabril Hayes, look out for him. Keith Guevara, look out for him. Payne
Hmm.
Bauer, he probably will be one of the best players on defense. You better look out for Payne Bauer. I'm telling you what, because that defense is looking good with Payne Bauer still there.
Hmm. And Keith Cuvée, he's just a junior. And I looked up the roster for Shranda. He's listed at 6'3", 260. Bill Hall said he could be one of the best offensive linemen that they've ever had. And I think Payne Bauer is going to go down as one of the best players to suit up for Shranda ever. They did lose some pretty good football players other than Hunter Ensminger. They lost Nick Mazza, who's going
TJ
to play at,
Washington.
yeah, TJ Washington. Mazza's going to play at Christopher Newport, which is no
Yeah.
slouch in D3. They lost JoJo Dolman, who went to Marshall. So with that being said, all that talent lost, it just seems like every year Bill Hall finds kids in the hallways and they've just, it's inevitable that they're going to have a solid, football team. And I have no doubt that they will. Again, another player that, according to Bill Hall, is going to get to run the ball this year, who didn't get to run it at all last year, really, until the final playoff game is Darius Lane. And Coach Hall just said it was just the fact that there were some really good players in front of him, and he just didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. But look for Darius Lane to run the ball a lot. And then Dylan Rotifer is the player. He's a sophomore, and he is a 6'1" sophomore, and he's competing with Shakai Campbell for the starting position, although I'm pretty sure it's going to be Campbell who will start for the Warriors as they open up August 30th at James Wood. Yeah, look for Shranda to be. Not sure they're going to be quite as good as they were last year, but I still think they'll win 7-8 games. And another thing about this year is that with that scheduling, I mean they don't have a bye before Martinsburg, and normally they always had that, and this year they won't. And then they've got Millbrook a little bit earlier than they had as well. They also play Harrisonburg, which is a big school. That's a 5A school. So and they used to play like Broadway, which was basically a scrimmage. So they'll have some tougher games, I think, this year. But still, I think they'll win 7 or 8 games for sure.
Another game they picked up is Culpeper County this year. Apparently they
And
were
because
really good.
and you know why, Josh? Because they're now in the Northwestern District.
Oh,
They moved in. Yep. Hmm.
well,
So
you learn
that
something new
makes
every day.
8 teams in the Northwestern District. So you're going to have 7 district games. So that's why because everybody's playing them. Millbrook, Jameswood, they're all playing Culpeper,
Okay.
and then that reason is because they're in the district.
Yeah, that
So.
makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, so Sharando, as you said earlier, lost a lot of great talent, and Coach Hall and staff does a great job at recruiting, as all these guys are playing at the college level, and sure, but they're gonna be young, but there are going to be some guys who are going to step up. Payne Bauer, he's still there. Keith Guevara, as you said earlier, but I think Sharando is going to do pretty good. And
Hmm.
good segue talking about the recruiting process. Talk about Pitt standout George Aston, who made it into the NFL playing for the Broncos. he's actually getting some starting time. Unfortunately, to see Andy Janovich go down with an injury out 6 to 8
Hmm.
weeks, George Aston, all the reports are pointing to him taking over the fullback spot.
Yeah, because Janovich was the starting fullback, I think, for the last 3 years for the Broncos. And George Aston, 2014 Sharando graduate, played 4 years at Pitt, undrafted, signed as a free agent by Denver, and just impressing in camp from day one. His work ethic and just he's a hard nosed kid, and I'm pretty sure he's going to make the roster now that because they've only got two fullbacks, or they probably would only keep two fullbacks, and he'd be one of them. And since he's healthy, he's the one that's going to play ahead of Janovich. So good for George Aston, doing great. First local player to play in a major professional sport, I guess, since Kelly Washington. Might be missing somebody, but there haven't been too many. So good on George Aston for doing well, and we wish him the best playing for the Denver Broncos. And you know what? They open. They're on Monday Night Football in Week 1. Have to stay up a little later to watch it. They're on at 10 o'clock. They take on Oakland. So you'll probably see George playing in that game.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm probably going to get Sunday tickets just so I can watch the Broncos, and I'm going to get a George Aston jersey.
There you go. That's cool.
Yeah, so that wraps up the 2019 high school football season preview. But before we say farewell, Dan, NFL season has started. Just under a month away until the regular season starts. Any big thoughts, predictions into the NFL season this year? I know you're a Lions fan, and the Patriots just beat them in preseason. But what are you looking for from the Lions and other teams?
I'm not holding my breath for the Lions. They're in a pretty tough division with Chicago and Minnesota with Kirk Cousins in his second year. I think they'll be a little bit better. So it's not going to be easy for Detroit, but probably going to have the same main teams: New England, Kansas City, the Chargers, kind of vying for that to go to the Super Bowl. And then on the other side, I think the AFC or the NFC is a little bit more wide open, but teams like the Rams, the Saints, the Bears, and the Eagles as well. So, and depends on what happens with the Cowboys, who they get in camp and who they don't, as to how they may fare. So, but hey, it's everybody starts out, with a clean slate, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I'd like to see Kyler Murray do well, but I don't want to see him do well in Week 1 because they play Detroit. So, but it's going to be interesting to see how he does, as small as he is, playing for Arizona with an awful offensive line. It'll be interesting to see how he does. So, looking forward to that NFL season. And we're going to do our Survivor pool, so I'm sure you'll be in on that with Ken, myself, and a bunch of others vying for what last year was about a $500 pot that my son won, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that'll be starting up Week 1 of the NFL season.
Yeah, I'm just hoping to make it past Week 1, like I picked the Saints last year.
Yeah. I think you and about 6 others are looking forward to getting past Week 1 because I think that's how many we lost in Week 1. So
it was crazy, and you were just trolling me earlier today, like Week 1 pick. I'm like, man, why do you have to bring that up?
Yeah, because as soon as I do it, I'll be knocked out in Week 1. So it can happen to anybody, man.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Dan, I wish you the best of luck with your high school football season. As always, it is a great pleasure having you on my podcast. Once again, Dan Gloucester, voice of high school football on Fox Sports 1550.com and iHeartRadio. Make sure you check out Dan and Ken's podcast, the Shenandoah Valley Sports Podcast, on iHeartRadio and Fox Sports 1550.com. As always, Dan, thanks once again, and hope you have a great season.
All right, Josh. Take care, man. See you around.
Yeah, yes, sir.
The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, part of the Mayo Please podcast network, is sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today at your local Food Lion, Martin's, and Giant stores. Be sure to look us up on social media as well. For Facebook, the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. For Twitter, at Kirby on Sports. For Instagram, at Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Just search the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also listen on www.mayoplease.com. If you have any questions for the show, shoot us an email, kirbyonsports@gmail.com.
All right, we are back. Once again, thank you so much to Dan Gloucester for that segment on high school football in the season ahead for Clark County, Sharando, James Wood, Millbrook, and Hanley. Very great segment, and thank you, Dan. We do really appreciate that. And getting into our last segment of the night, the NFC East preview of our schedule breakdowns. Each and every week, we will do a division, talk about their schedule, what we like, what we don't like, what we think their record will be. And in no particular order, we will start off with the Washington Redskins.
In no particular order.
I picked it at random, I swear. I swear.
Okay,
in order.
Fair enough.
So, Dan, what you like about the Redskins, what you think about them this year, and whatnot.
Well, I think we had this discussion before, and I think the Redskins are going to have a down year this year. They're kind of a young team, and they've had a lot of injuries. I think they're going to have some injuries this year again, but they've already got some guys injured before the season's even started this year, obviously. But their schedule also is not. It's not that easy either, Josh, and I think you would agree with that.
I'll get into that in just a little bit.
We'll break it down, but they've got some questions at quarterback. They've got questions. They've got a lot of question marks on defense. I told you I saw their receiving core. I only recognize like two names on there: Josh Doxson and Brian Quick. The other guys, I have no idea who they are. But so I think they're like a 6-10 team, to be quite honest with you. And I think that's what you had them as, right?
Yeah, but before we break down the schedule there, I just want to go through some stats from last season. 4 out of the 6 division games they played, they lost. Unacceptable. They ran through 4 quarterbacks last season.
They did. They also signed a guy who was out of football for like 7 years.
Alex Smith played 10 games before he broke his leg against Houston. Colt McCoy played 3 games with an 0-2 record before injuring his leg. Then Mark Sanchez got signed. I don't know why. That was a terrible decision, and I'm glad he got benched, and then he retired for Josh Johnson.
Oh, did he retire?
Yeah, he retired. He retired now, but then Josh Johnson came in with a 1-2 record to finish out the Redskins season. So injuries at the quarterback position did play a key part for the Washington Redskins. And
yeah, they also didn't really have any receivers that really helped out, Josh. And the offensive line, again, as I talked about earlier, has been a problem, and I think will continue to be a problem this year for them until they acquire some free agent help. I think it's going to be. And I don't know how much Donald Penn's going to make a difference. We'll see. But I didn't mean to cut you off. It seemed like you were still talking. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. But now I want to talk about the Redskins' schedule.
Yeah.
The first 5 games in particular. 3 out of the 5 division games for the first 5 weeks are division games. They play the Eagles week 1, Dallas week 2, and the Giants week 4. Then they have 2 really tough ones. Chicago week 3 on Monday night. and then they're playing the New England Patriots. I have the Redskins 1, 2, 3, losing 3 in a row against the Eagles, Cowboys, and Bears, beating the Giants, and losing to New England to start the year. So 1 out of the 5 games they will win, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's...
But still, it's against the Giants, so those Giants games in years past have been a toss-up.
Yeah.
But it is towards the beginning of the season, so, And then Redskins play Miami, San Francisco.
Miami could be a loss, too.
Then Minnesota on Thursday night. That's going to be a pivotal game with Kirk Cousins playing for the Vikings. Then Buffalo, a Week 10 bye. The Jets, Lions, Panthers, Packers. Then the last 3 weeks of the season, Eagles, Giants, Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Redskins at 6-10.
And it's like I said, I agree with that. So what games do you have that are wins? Let's talk about that.
The Giants,
Okay.
the Dolphins,
Ooh,
the 49ers,
okay.
the Jets.
You don't have them beating the Bills?
No.
Really?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The Lions. No, excuse me, no. The Jets, the Packers, in them upsetting the Eagles.
You have them beating the Packers on the road at Lambeau.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They beat the Packers like twice in the regular season. Remember that Sunday night game and that game last year?
That was last year, though.
No, I mean,
They still had Alex Smith.
I still don't think the Packers are going to be that great.
I'd have more like 5-11, I guess, considering I agree with some of your games, but I think they can beat the Bills on the road. The Bills are just a bad team, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
The Redskins are going to struggle either way.
Oh yeah,
there's no way they can make it to the playoffs this year. They're definitely rebuilding, and I'm hoping that they will continue to grow and hopefully get better in years to come.
Yeah.
Moving right along to the Dallas Cowboys.
Bum.
Last year they advanced to the divisional round in the playoffs, losing to the Rams 30-22. Dallas, as you know, with that controversy, Zeke and Dak both trying to get paid.
It's not much of a controversy as much as it is just two guys who want their money. I mean, and I think the one guy's worth it, the other guy's not. But I mean, I guess that kind of is a controversy, but we use that term so loosely now, though.
Yeah. So, anyways, I have the Cowboys at 9-7, losing to the Saints, Eagles, Vikings, Patriots, Bears, Rams, and Eagles.
I think that's about what I would choose.
I have the They're going to be a good team, but they're not going to do as great as they did last year. I can tell you that. But the Dallas Cowboys, something about their schedule I want to talk about. They have 5 primetime games.
Yep.
Sunday night, Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night.
Yep.
That's insane how many primetime games they have. Why aren't they spread out? I don't get that.
No, because the teams that earn the most money get the most airtime. With teams like the Steelers, the Patriots, the Cowboys, we're going to be seeing a lot of them next year, and that's just how it works in the NFL. It's not fair. I agree with you, but yeah, it's we talked about this during our first divisional preview. We talked about how the way they set up the primetime games isn't fair. So yeah, it is what it is. It's not right, but these teams have a large fan bases. So
yeah, I understand, and they're technically called America's team, which I don't really
rolls
get.
eyes.
Yeah, but they're gonna do all right, but not as well.
Their offense is going to be pretty
not
good.
as well as last year.
Right. I know.
Jason
I totally
Witten's
agree.
coming back, so you never know for tight end how he's going to perform.
I don't think we'll see much out of him. To be honest,
it's a coin flip in the air for me, but I think Jason Witten won't be the same. He's been out of it for a year.
He doesn't make him. He won't make much of a difference.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet. I'm trying to think of there was a player who was away a year and then came back. I can't remember. It wasn't that long ago. Anyway, whatever. People who step away from a sport and then decide to come back like a year or two later, they're just not the same. You can't take that long gap off and expect to be the same player. It's just not going to happen. And I think he got back in football because his broadcast career wasn't going as well as he'd hoped. And I think you would agree that he was pretty rough to listen to on Monday Night Football.
I have a problem with him.
I thought he was unbearable, but that's just my opinion.
Well, you know more because you're going into play-by-play.
I don't know that much about play-by-play. I mean, I know what I hear. You know, I don't know.
Yeah. So, do you agree 9-7 for the Dallas Cowboys?
I think that's probably. I agree with just about every game you picked. So yes, I would agree 9-7, and probably winning the division. Would you agree with that?
No.
No, you think the Eagles?
Yeah, it's the Eagles who we're moving on to right now. I have the Eagles at 10-6, losing to the Vikings, Cowboys once, the Patriots, and Redskins in upset.
Sorry.
Just because those division games are toss-up. I can't say that enough. But the Eagles, coming off a year, Carson Wentz got injured again. Nick Foles helped them. And
they said bye-bye to Nicky Foles.
Yep, Nick Foles is Jacksonville now. But I think Carson Wentz is going to do great. He just has to stay healthy, you know?
Yeah, that's been his problem. He's been so up and down too, and the injuries have played a part in that. But the Eagles have a pretty solid defense too. I think that's going to help them win games as well. A lot of people aren't talking about that, but we'll see. I'd say the Cowboys have a better shot at winning the division than the Eagles, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the end.
It's going to be
It's going to come down.
It's going to be a shootout between the Cowboys and the Eagles.
I mean,
who knows?
They play in Week 16, so I mean, I think that's a game that if you're
a pivotal point.
If you're a fan of this division, you circle that game on the calendar basically, and you say that's the game we're trying to win, especially because they'll probably be the two teams that are competing for the top spot. No offense to Redskins and Giants fans, but I think 10-6 is fair. I'd say 9-7 as well. But again, I don't know. You know more. You know a lot more about the NFC East. You've watched a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more NFC East battles than I have.
It just depends on how much the Eagles have regressed because they have Deshaun Jackson back. I know they have a couple key players, and
I don't know how much. Yeah, Deshaun Jackson. I don't know.
He's back again.
I know, but
another miracle in the Meadowlands.
We'll see about that. I don't know, but I don't know how much of a difference he's gonna make, Josh. I mean, I don't know.
But
we'll see.
I think they're.
He really played with some pathetic. He had a pathetic quarterback in Tampa Bay. So we'll see. Maybe this makes a difference for him.
Yeah,
but he also played in Washington. So.
I mean, I think there's some players for the Eagles who are going to step up. I don't think the Eagles are going to do a lot of regressing, so
that's fair. Like I said, I
think 10-6 is a good record.
I would agree. I think it's a toss-up between the Giants. Eagles and Cowboys.
Yeah, I
can
agree with that.
And I think again that week 16 game, which is a afternoon slate, 4:25 on Fox. Just so you have it, what provider it's going to be on or what channel it's going to be on, what time. Circle that game on December 22nd because that's going to be a big one coming down the stretch.
Yep. And moving on. The Giants are going to be last place, I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Odell's gone. Why'd they trade Odell? I still don't know. But I have the Giants beating the Bills, Buccaneers, Cardinals, because the Cardinals are not going to do anything this year. The Dolphins and Skins once.
I don't have them beating the Dolphins. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, I mean...
They could probably beat the Skins once.
Towards the end of the season when the Redskins give up, like they usually do. But 5-11's my record. The Giants, I'm not sure why they traded...
4-12.
I'm not sure why they traded Odell, but
I think it's because he was such a distraction.
Eli, I just don't think he's going to be the same. He hasn't been the same, and I just think the Giants are going to be they're still rebuilding.
He hasn't been the same since 2011.
Well, once again, I think Daniel Jones is going to come in halfway through the year and have to try to help the team win some games. But that's just me. I could be
I said that.
completely wrong.
I said that earlier. I think fans will be calling for him earlier than that. And we, like I said, we know how New York fans are. So we'll see what happens. I don't know, but it's all so interesting, this division, especially the fight for.
It's always an interesting division.
There's
the
always
NFC
there's
East.
always big upsets. I wouldn't say big upsets. There's always upsets though, and I mean the Giants could surprise some people with some late wins. I don't think they beat the Dolphins though. I disagree with that. I think other than that, I agree with pretty much what you said. So you said 5-11. I say 4-12. It's all the same really. We'll see how Odell and his new quarterback play together. But I think a big reason they got rid of him, Josh, was because of the lack of chemistry between he and Eli Manning. They're just way different personalities. They're way different players. Eli's very quiet, he kind of keeps his kind of doesn't talk much, and Odell's the complete opposite. He wants to be Mr. Attention, and he wants to talk trash and all that stuff, and that's cool. But so we'll see how it goes in Cleveland. I'm sure we'll be able to update you throughout the season on how it's going.
So our predictions on the standings for the NFC East, I have the Eagles in first, Cowboys in second, Redskins in third, and the Giants in last place. The Giants will be the Redskins' pillow once again.
Yeah, I agree with that, except I think you can interchange Cowboys and Eagles. You could switch them, and either one could be 1 or 2 in the division. I think it's going to be interesting down the stretch, like I said, especially that late game between the Cowboys and Eagles. They seem to always play on either Week 16 or Week 17 like every year, especially recently, being
Makes
that
it
they've
interesting.
been both competing for the division crown. So
Yeah.
Anywho, yeah.
Yeah. So you're heading back to school here in a little bit.
I am. I'm trying to go back on Monday, so we'll see. I'll be back through town a few other times before I settle back in for good. But
so we will.
I've got so much to do, man. So many. I got books to get, furniture, parking pass, meal plan, all that fun stuff.
So we'll be missing you on the podcast. We hope you can come on via phone a lot.
I'd love to call every week, man, and be on your show.
Yes, sir.
That's for sure.
Yep. So that's it for this week. Once again, we apologize for taking a week off, but just had very busy schedules. But we're back. We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. I like that presentation.
I like that too.
I'm going to keep that in my brain for next time. But
good.
anyways, as always, we're part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network. Make sure you check them out at the Mayo Please and www.themayoplease.com, not the www.themayoplease.com. And we're sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. Thank you, as always, to Dave Johnson and JR Beats Official. Till next time, Josh and Dan signing off. We'll catch you later. Peace out.